Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Big Four event, where we bring you insights today from the world of consulting and professional services. My name is Hiba Abbasi, and I would like to welcome you all on behalf of the University of Manchester Middle East Center team. You know, consulting is one of the most popular jobs and highly sought after by MBA students for its fast-paced and high-earning potential. And amongst the thousands of consulting firms that exist today, the Big Four has been recognized as leading providers, not only in consulting, but also in the professional services at large. Today, we are delighted to have representatives from all the Big Four companies who are with us today to talk about their personal journey, their experience, and they're going to talk about how to break into consulting, what are the qualities of a consultant, what are some of the skills that you need to develop to get into the consulting world, and how can an MBA help you develop these skills. So we're delighted to have with us our speakers today, and I will start with those joining us online. So from Saudi Arabia, I would like to welcome Amal and Abdul Jabbar. Amal is the head of people at KPMG Professional Services. And also joining us online is Asim Riaz. Asim is the senior manager at PwC Management Consulting for the Middle East. And joining us here today is Isabel Champosian, who is the moderator and a chair for the session today. We have Makram Musharrafieh. Makram is the director of People Advisory Services at Ernst & Young. And last but not least, Dave Silman, who's operational and commercial advisory at Deloitte Professional Services. I'd like to mention that all four speakers are alumni of Alliance Manchester Business School and have MBAs. Isabel, I just want to mention that is a senior manager business consulting at UI, and she will be moderating the session. So without any further ado, I would like to welcome our speakers and welcome you all and thank you for being here. And I'd like to pass it on to Isabel.
Thank you, Hiba. Thanks, Hiba. And hi, everyone. So I'm Isabel. I'll be moderating today's event. So just to give you a quick snapshot on the topics that we're going to cover in our questions today, we'll start by first describing what makes a career in consulting in Big Four different than other consulting companies. Then what are the skills required in management consulting? What are the challenges that a candidate could potentially face when entering a consulting company? We'll also touch on recruitment in the consulting company and in the Big Four environment. And finally, we'll talk about the MBAs and how it actually helps you in case you are looking forward to a career in consulting. So, Makram, yourself, you have over 15 years of experience, and you've been in the Big Four company and you've been in different consulting companies as well. So could you tell us what makes a consulting company in a Big Four different than a consulting company in another consulting firm?
Sure. First of all, good afternoon. Good evening, everyone. And thanks, Hiba and Randa, for having us attend this event and be part of this panel and share our experience in the management consulting world. So, very interesting question, and I get it often from people who are trying to join the management consulting industry. And first, I think it's worth understanding what other types of management consulting companies are there other than what we call the Big Four. And I think there are a few clear clusters other than the Big Four, namely what we call the strategy houses. These are the firms that predominantly provide strategic planning type services. And the difference with them is mainly that they provide their services at a very contextual level, very broad in terms of their strategic thinking and strategic offering. And here there's a main difference with Big Four. Big Four, we dive more into the details, we get closer more into implementation. Engagements tend to be a little bit more complex, a little bit more long in terms of their term that could extend several months or years in comparison to strategic type initiatives or services that might be 3 to 6 months. So breadth is really the main difference when we compare with these types of firms. On the other hand, you have the niche firms, those who focus on a very particular type of service or a very specific sector. For example, there are several firms who do only HR type services. And these are direct competitors to the service time part of which is people advisory. And the difference there is that in this case, we can cover a wider variety of sectors, given the huge size of our task force and our staff and our focus. Rather than being very specific, our coverage is much wider. And this really gives people who are part of the Big Four the opportunity to work on a variety of sectors and a variety of clients. So these are some of the differences in comparison to strategy houses and niche consultancies. But I think we share some common characteristics, which Hiba touched on, which is it's a very fast-paced environment, very demanding, and I think these are common across the board.
Right, Makram. And I think what's common as well is the career path, the journey that a consultant starts until they become, if they want to, definitely a director and a partner. So for the next question, I'm going to Hassan. Hassan, you've also been in the industry for quite some time. Could you tell us what is a typical career path in a consulting firm and in a Big Four environment?
Thanks, Isabel. I think that's a very good question, and I will share my own personal experience, how I joined consulting, and I think that will be a great explanation for this question, actually. So I think majority of the people, the typical path is people come into after their graduation, they start with their careers in different types of industries and in a different type of companies, and then they actually go on with their MBA, right? And as I think Makram also touched upon that, there's a variety of offerings that we have in Big Fours, which varies from strategy to execution. So once you do an MBA, then you are open for joining any consulting firm, right? So initially, I guess you need to have 2 to 3 years of experience in the industry, and that gives you a very basic understanding of the businesses, how businesses works, right, in the corporate world. And then you do an MBA, which actually broaden your horizon further, which gives you a perspective of a business, not from a technical perspective, but from an end-to-end business perspective, right? So which actually, yeah.
No. Yes, I'm sorry, we've had some technical issues. If you could just start over.
Can you hear me properly?
So we were discussing, so I was asking about the typical career path and your experience specifically. Could you?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, I was discussing the same. So did you hear me what I have said, or should I repeat it again?
No, actually, it would be nice if you could start again. We've had some technical issues.
Okay. So actually what I was saying is that typically in the consulting firm, people usually start their careers after their undergrad with the industry experience. So they spend typically 2 to 3 years starting their career in the corporate world. And then they, join business schools, which actually gives them a bit of a start how industry works or how the businesses that works in the industry environment. And then they come to the business school where they give more broader horizon around from a business perspective, how the business works all the way from the strategy to finance to human resources, an end-to-end picture of a business, right? And that actually enable a candidate to join a consulting firm, because that actually enable you to look at a business holistically from a path that usually consulting firms pursue a candidate from an initial candidate perspective. And another way, usually what people does is people also start their businesses, especially in Big Fours, from the undergrad as well. So these are two different approaches that Big Fours actually adopt for hiring candidates in the consulting. But the former one, the one I explained earlier, is a typical career path in the strategy houses. And we also adopt that in Big Four, with the combination of fresh hires as well as undergrads. After their undergrad, we hire fresh graduates as well in Big Fours. So these are two different types of career paths that people adopt.
Thank you, Asim. So obviously, to join the career in consulting, you need a lot of skills and different technical and soft skills. Zaid, you've been in consulting both in the UK and in the UAE, so you've seen different regions and you have different international experience. But when it comes to skills, what would you say are the required skills for a consultant in order to go through in this career?
Sure. Can you all hear me? Yeah, great. Okay, thanks very much. So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. So I've had about 15 years in professional services, 8 of which in the Middle East and the rest in the UK. In terms of skills, there are a lot of skills, some of which were mentioned earlier. But for me, I think the willingness to keep on learning, to keep developing. It is true that you work in different industries and sectors. It means that you have so much to learn, and learning is a never-ending process in professional services, whether you're an analyst or partner. The other thing is your ability to interact and deal with people, whether it be your colleagues, clients, or external stakeholders. You know, consulting at the end of the day is a people business. So you might be very strong analytically, but if you have issues in how you manage or how you relate to people, then it could be, it could be detrimental to your career development, especially as you become more senior. The longer you stay in the firm, the less it's about the strategy and the analytics and all the rest of it, and it's more about business development, the people management, dealing with conflicting stakeholders, oftentimes having to deal with irate customers. It does happen. Diplomatic skills are very important, ability to see things from multiple standpoints. And I guess underpinning all of that is empathy, because empathy, your ability to understand the situation from somebody else's point of view, is really critical in terms of how you assess and resolve that situation. So that's a bit of a snapshot.
Isabel, if you allow me to add just 2 words I want you to remember, and those things were very much of a focus in EY when I joined back in 2007. They always spoke about versatility and adaptability. And what we mean by versatility is, as my colleague mentioned, every day you meet different clients, different stakeholders who have different characters, different way of doing business. So you need to have versatility in your own character in order to be able to deal with the various type of stakeholders and clients that you need to handle on a daily basis. So that's a very critical thing that you need to have within your character. The second thing, adaptability, is more about the environment where you're working in. So today you're in Dubai, tomorrow you're in Oman, the other day you're in KSA. And although it's all GCC, and you might even have exposure to countries outside GCC, still there are some differences in the way the working environment functions. And you need to have that adaptability in your character to be able to immediately hit the ground running and cater to the requirements of that work environment. So versatility, adaptability. Don't ask me how you build those skills, but that's your exam question. So focus on these two.
So my next question was actually going to be, how do you acquire the skills in order to join the consulting career? But if you were to give like any interested candidate any tips to acquire these skills, probably what would you tell them? Like, what's the best way to do it? What are the resources that they could use? What are the tools that they have?
I think from my point of view, it's the ability to constantly ask questions: how, why, where. You might have had a lot of industry experience, a lot of sector experience, but never assume that you know everything, because there's always something you need to learn. In terms of how, I would say, if you're currently in industry, go and talk to different people in different departments. Understand how they do things. Try and forge relationships from people outside of your division or your team or even your geography. Try and get an understanding of how the business works more holistically. The process of doing that, I believe, allows you to develop those kind of skills. And also try and look at things from a different perspective. It's been a while. I graduated from the MBA programs 20 years ago now. But I'm sure when you did your MBA, you covered things like, looking at things from alternative viewpoints. Try and put yourself in the position of a senior stakeholder in the business, maybe a chief operating officer or a chief marketing officer. What are the things that are important to them? What do they, what keeps them up at night? Always try and look at different angles, because you'll be asked to do that if you join a consulting firm. You might be involved in projects where you may have little or no prior knowledge. That doesn't really matter. It's more how you approach the problem, and how you work in teams in order to come up with a different type of solution.
Thank you for that, Zaid. So we've touched on skills, and you've also touched on experience as well, which is very important in consulting. So for my next question, I want to turn to Amal. Amal, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so Amal, you've had quite a long experience in the industry before joining consulting in 2019, I guess. So you worked in education and you worked in healthcare quite intensively. Could you tell us how this experience actually helped you in your consulting career?
The career that I like, the coming into consultancy, and I came into consultancy not as Makram and Zaid as a client facing. I'm actually in people services, so heading and headhunting the consultants. So coming into it, even though I wasn't client facing, gave me an experience that I haven't had the privilege to experience before. Specifically when it came to how this industry works. And it is, as Makram said before, fast-paced. And I learned a lot in terms of what Zaid touched upon, which was spot on in terms of what kind of skills you need. And I just wanted to add to what Zaid said specifically in terms of how to acquire these skills. And what helped me specifically was mainly coming in with a learning mentality and being willing to listen and to learn. Active listening helped me a lot. Trying to understand what is required of me. For me, the consultants themselves are my clients. I need to understand their needs in order for them to succeed with the external clients. What I learned differently is from the pace that I was in education and in healthcare, which was more of government or semi-gov, was the pace was a little slower. We were like, as you know, it's more relaxed. Things take their time to develop. However, with consultancy, things are needed yesterday. So it's quite a big difference in terms of catching up with the pace. It helped me learn how to manage my time, how to prioritize, And I think these are skills that you gain with time and with experience.
Thank you for that, Aman. I'll also probably ask Asim, since Asim, you also worked in telecom before joining PwC. So could you tell us a bit also about your experience joining from the industry? Asim, can you hear us? You can move to the next question. All right, so I think we lost Asim. All right, so we move to the next question. So when it comes to recruiting in consulting firms, there's a lot of organic growth that happens, but there's also hiring that happens from outside as well. So Zaid, could you tell us more about usually how recruitment is done in Big Four companies?
Sure. I presume you're talking more about the MBA stream. Typically for MBAs, we look to bring them in at a certain level if they have no prior consulting experience. If they do, we may consider them at a level of one or two levels higher. But essentially the hiring process is three parts. There's the technical assessment, and if it's strategy work, then it's the case study. And this is very common to what the strat houses use. You're given a case, you're given half an hour or so, you're trying, the other candidate has got to try and solve the case by asking structured questions. If they go through that process, then there's a discussion about their career aspirations, why they want to join consulting, and so forth. And then the final stage is a partner interview, which is more of a sort of not confirmatory, but just to see if there's the right cultural fit. That's generally the process. For more experienced hires, we generally look at people with very specific industry skills, whether it's telecoms or banking or whatever it is. And in those instances, we bring them in as industry specialists. So they may not be project-focused practitioners in the sense that we are, but they may spend their time working between different projects, providing their specialist industry or functional expertise, whatever it is. Otherwise, it becomes difficult if they have no prior consulting experience. It becomes difficult for them to fit into the consulting framework. What a lot of people don't perhaps fail to comprehend is that in joining a consulting firm, you're actually developing two careers. You're developing your technical skills, your functional skills, but you're also learning how to be a consultant. And that's not something that happens overnight. That takes, quite often many years to develop all the soft skills, the client-facing skills, and all the rest of it, which is why our preference is to bring people, much like the other firms, on graduating or soon after graduating from the MBA program and providing them the requisite training so that they can work on project teams effectively.
So there's quite a journey to join the consulting company, but once someone joins a consulting firm, based on your experience and what you have seen, are they expected to land on their feet from day one, or do you usually have a proper onboarding process and training?
There is a very comprehensive onboarding process, and I'll speak for my firm. Every new person goes through a very long onboarding program. That's obviously for them to understand the specifics of how the firm works, but also to cover things like risk and compliance, which in the area that I deal with is very, very important. And also as a firm that's regulated by the DFSA, it's extremely important for all our project practitioners to be aware of all the regulations around the specifics of what we do. No person's ever left alone, whether they're a new hire or they've been with the firm for 20 plus years. everyone is assigned a counselor and what we term buddy. I think it has different terminology depending on the firm, but essentially that person is a guide to help them sort of integrate into the firm, and also really to act as a sounding board if they have any concerns or issues, if there's anything that they may not be able to bring up with their project manager for whatever reason. There's always somebody with whom they can speak.
I'll just like, Isabel, I will just like to add one more point to question number 2, which Zaid actually explained very well. I guess there is a requirement from the students of MBA to basically, have some, and it is a good platform, especially when it comes to MBS, that we have workshops and we have presentations and we, do our research, and then we put together our, presentations and present the next day in our workshops, the one we used to have in our classes, right? So I think one of the key experience that the students that can get from the universities is basically to develop the habit of storyboarding. I guess that is very important when you go and advise a client, and when you present a solution to the client. I think that is very important, that you should be coming very well prepared how to develop a presentation or how to basically tell a story. In consulting, this is very key. Analysis, I think any specialist technical expert can do, right? So, but how to present it and convert it into a business language or in a business terms how that will impact a business, a particular analysis, right? I think that storyboarding is very well can be learned in the MBA, and that's what I learned actually, how to build the stories when you present your analysis, when you present your work, and I think that is the expectation from the young consultants who join consulting industry after their MBA, that they should be able to do that as well. So I think that is one point that I would like to mention here.
Definitely agree with you. Awesome. Thanks for that. So moving on from the skills, let's talk more about the barriers to entry in the consulting domain. So Makram, based on your experience, what would you say are some challenges that a candidate could face when they are looking into entering consulting?
Sure. So I think part of it was covered by Zaid when he said the focus is mainly on graduates. So the intake is early so that you can get immersed immediately into the consulting world and start learning to be a consultant before learning the technical field that you are part of or the service line you belong to. So I think the later in your career that you try to enter into consulting, the more where you need to demonstrate transferable skills and experience that you've had in the industry that is similar to delivering projects in the consulting world. So if you're coming from a corporate development type role, or you've had any experience within your company where you have delivered internal initiatives, that are very much similar to what we deliver and offer in the consulting world, that helps you overcome that barrier of lack of management consulting experience. And to compensate for that, sometimes we do give a chance to candidates who have a wealth of either sector expertise, sector specific, and we refer to them as subject matter experts or technical experts, or a wealth of functional expertise. So I'll take the service line I belong to as an example, people advisory services. So if somebody is coming with a strong CV as an HR director in any of the industries out there, we do give it consideration, because we think that wealth of experience is very valuable to us. They're coming in fresh from the industry. They're bringing in the latest know-how and trends in the HR world. that's valuable to me. I can use it and I can tell it to my clients as subject matter expertise. So it might actually compensate and overcome the barrier of lack of management consulting experience. But Isabel, really, we do not have like a go, no go checklist whereby we say this CV is out, this CV is in. We really do give due consideration for every single application. Every single CV goes through a filtration process. And in the cases where there is no relevance whatsoever to consulting type experience, and there's no tangible sector or functional expertise that we really need in UI, then that's the main barrier to dismiss a candidacy or a CV. Otherwise, we do give it attention.
Okay, thank you, Makram. One challenge that I'd like to touch on, and which is quite important, is the female attrition rate in the consulting world. And for that, I'll turn to Aman. Aman, based on your experience, what do you think? Like, what is the attitude towards female candidates in consulting, and why do you think we have a challenge around like the female attrition rate? Especially
so as you know, there is a high demand for talent in general. However, in terms of like attrition of our females, it's especially within MENA, and I'm going to go especially as zooming in as well into Saudi and the Gulf. It has a lot to do as well with the cultural aspects as well, economical and cultural aspects that we have within the within this region. Of course, there is an evolution that is happening, and we can see a lot of females entering the work policies to make them more inclusive for our working moms and females in general. The opportunities created now basically help our women succeed. You can see more women in managerial positions and leadership positions. Speaking of KPMG specifically, we appointed new partners this year, and we have promoted a lot of our female colleagues. You can see a lot of like opposed to the past, or in terms of like this evolving, role models, female role models, people that can tell you that you can also make it and you can become a leader as well. So mainly it has to do with more flexibility. And I think even coming in with COVID, which was, I think we will surely touch upon, but that also helps us understand flexibility and how that can help facilitate for all our people, but mainly also our working moms within the workforce.
Isabel, if I may add, so diversity and inclusion for EY is top of our strategic agenda. So we focus a lot of that on that. We do a lot of initiatives in that space, and that has to be accompanied, of course, with changing the relevant policies in order to support such initiatives, namely the maternity policy. But to your question about how clients receive the female staff with the consulting team, I think if I look back at the time I joined EY back in 2007, my first time, I think you could count the female consultants within the team on one hand. That number has risen significantly over the years, which is great to see. We're seeing a lot of female colleagues progressing into the partnership ranks, which again is great to see. But what I really like is on the other side of the table, on every single engagement or project I'm currently involved in, our counterparts have a lot of females within their ranks, which really gives us additional encouragement and motivation also to increase the number of females within our teams. So definitely much better than the previous years, and hopefully it continues that positive trend.
Can I add to what Makram said in terms of the other side of the table? So for in terms of like changes in policy within on a regional level, or actually on a local level here in KSA, the Vision 2030, one of its main mandates is to include more diversity, to have more diversity and inclusion within the workforce. So including more females and hiring more females and putting them in more leadership positions. So as Makram said, on the other side of the table. Which in turn also gave more exposure with scholarship programs, more opportunities for education and development within the workforce itself, giving more opportunities at the end. So the attitude, if we're going to say, is changing dramatically, and that has to do a lot of, like I said before, with the economic and social changes. Specifically in Saudi Arabia, and also where it was more advanced before in the region, the wider region.
Thank you, Aman. So another challenge that we see as well in consulting can be a challenge and it can be a good thing as well, is the traveling that is required in order to serve our clients. And just before we started, we were just talking about it and how we started traveling again and visiting our clients to support them on site after the whole pandemic. Could you tell us more about how much traveling is usually required in consulting? How do you balance work-life balance in this model? And like more about your experience.
I will split that between pre and post-COVID. So pre-COVID, in my service line, I was traveling effectively every week across the GCC, sometimes further afield. Post-pandemic, we've agreed with most, not all, but most of our clients that we can work remotely. That's obviously beneficial for us, but also for them, because for the last thing they want, frankly, is an army of consultants coming in and working on site. There are instances where you don't have a choice, you have to travel. Conference calls are great, but I think we all know it never really, it's not the same as a face-to-face interaction, and especially in this part of the world. You know, you can never place too much emphasis on actually going and meeting people, understanding the real issues underpinning why they want to instigate a project. When you do have to travel, and it doesn't, and partly, you know, you have to manage your time accordingly. That's not always possible. If the project's large, or if the client is large and influential, often you don't have that choice. But I think post-COVID, clients now are more accepting that people will not just turn up Sunday morning and leave on Thursday afternoon. I think the clients understand the need for more flexibility, and they're willing to accommodate it to some degree. But should you decide to go into professional services, then I think you have to set the expectation that you will be asked to travel. You know, whether it's for a day or two or a week or a month, that all depends, you know, which service line and which operating group you join. There's no hard and fast rule, but, you know, the travel expectation is there, and you need to really square that with your family and your friends. There's no getting around that.
Thank you, Zaid. So off to the last section of our questions today, which is the MBA. And yeah, so sorry. The last section, the MBA. And how is the MBA that you're currently doing or that you just finished or you finished going to help you into consulting? Asim, based on your experience, and you also touched on that earlier on when you were talking about how it helps you in storyboarding. What are the other things that an MBA could actually help you in developing for a consulting career?
Exactly. So the key thing that I was just mentioning in my previous response, I think MBA also developed quite a lot of other skills as well. When you come basically from a technical background, like myself, I was a telecom engineer before I joined, or I took admission in MBS for doing my MBA. I think it learns quite a bit of, looking into the business from a different perspectives. You also learn how to, absorb the perspective of different other people and provide a best solution to your client, right? In terms of, as one of the key aspect of our MBS MBA is just to do teamwork, right? So that also helped me in listening to other, provide my perspective, and then come up with a best possible solution to our clients. Apart from that, I guess it also gives you a very good analytical, helps you in learning the analytical skill, where basically you analyze things not from one perspective, you analyze things from different perspective, and then you come up with, different kinds of analysis. I'm sure everyone has done those in MBA, like the PESTER analysis, the 5 force analysis, the SWOT analysis, all those kind of things. Those are the different skills when you look into different things, and that helps you in coming in consulting with a full equipped and have those tools in your with you to help you deliver the best possible solutions to your client. Yeah, so these are the skills that I have learned during my MBA at least.
Okay, and what about networking? So how would you advise candidates to leverage their network in order to join a career in consulting?
Absolutely, absolutely. That was one of the key things that I have learned, or I have taken advantage while doing an MBA, because we have students from different industries, from different cultures, from different line of businesses. So that actually helps me in connecting with different people, and that also helps me to even looking into different consulting firms where I can be best fitted after doing my MBA. So yes, networking is one of the very strong benefit of an MBS MBA, I would say.
Thank you, Asim. Makram, would you have anything to add on this, the MBA?
I think definitely the MBA enriches your knowledge base, which is very much important in our line of business. Clients come to you for your knowledge and your skill set. So you definitely need to come across as knowledgeable in your in the relevant sector and the relevant function. So that for me was very much valuable. The amount of reading that we had to do was tremendous but great. So I carried a book, an MBS book, with me everywhere I went. So that definitely was great. I think also I remember the projects that we had to do to finish every one of the courses we had. I think that puts you in a similar situation that you're in every day in consulting. You're not delivering consulting projects at home. You're always part of a bigger team, and you need to learn how to communicate with team members, how to collaborate, how to coordinate different tasks in order to deliver outcomes that are demanding, that are against a specific timeline, and there are consequences if you miss them. So learning how to work jointly with other people that you might not really know really well or have worked with before. Case in point, we're both EY, we're meeting for the first time today. and we might end up on a project together tomorrow. So we need to learn how to, back to the versatility and adaptability, how we can collaborate and work. So I really appreciated that, that part of the MBA program. For me, it helped me actually transition out of the Big Four. So I got my opportunity when I got my MBA to join an engineering consultancy firm, Atkins, a British consultancy firm, and it gave me an opportunity to cover a bigger region, travel into Africa and the Southeast Asia. So I got a bigger role, bigger exposure, bigger responsibility, and a big jump in terms of career. So for that, definitely the MBA was super useful and recommended, of course.
Thank you, Makram. And Zaid, you're also an alumni of Manchester University. So based on your experience, what could you tell us about how the MBA helped you?
All of the points mentioned by the previous speakers. And also, I think it demonstrates to a prospective employer that you can commit to something as rigorous as a MBA program of study that shows dedication, determination, and that's obviously very important to an employer. In terms of skills, I think the ability to work collaboratively with people, that's something you're going to need throughout the rest of your working life. The ability to communicate with different types of people. You know, the core business knowledge, frankly, does fade over time. I mean, I can't remember half of the models I learned on the MBA program, but, you know, I remember the team working. I remember, you know, trying to forge a solution to a client problem. And that's 20 years ago. You know, so that's the kind of stuff, and that's the kind of stuff you will need. I have the same issues day after day. How do we deal with this? And they are generally, as you become more senior, the work you're asked to do is less systematic and much more sort of abstract. It's much more nebulous, if you like. There's no rule book. There's no join the dots type of approach. And so in order to able to function effectively, you have to know how to deliver through people and how to manage people and how to interact with people. And I think for me, ultimately, that's the most valuable skill.
Okay, thank you. And I want to thank all the panel members for your answers, your participation. I hope everyone found it useful. I think with that, we'll hand over to Q&A. To the Q&A.
Thank you, Isabel. Now we'd like to open the session for your questions. So we'll start from the audience here. Do you have any questions that you'd like to start? Shipra, can you please proceed?
Okay, I can stop right now. Hi, thank you for sharing your insights. I'm curious to know two things. By the way, my name is Shipra, and I moved here with my full-time MBA students here, originally from India, coming from Vancouver, Canada, in my first year of MBA. So here's my question. So you've had this MBA journey, and also you're into this consulting field for so many years. I'm curious to understand what is it that one lesson that, you know, something that nobody told you back then, you know, that one thing we always know, I wish I knew this. I wish somebody had told this to me these many years ago, maybe as an MBA student or as a consultant. So what is it that one piece of advice or lesson that you would want to share that you think, you know, people are not going to know about this? And my second question is, consulting industry, the kind of work lifestyle, and from my friends who are working in Big Four, I've heard from them, you know, it's challenging, it's tough, it's not a cakewalk. So I'm wanting to know, what is it like that keeps you going into this field? You know, like you've been here for so many years. So what is it that one thing that keeps you stay in this industry for so long, despite all these challenges? Yeah.
Who would like to start with the first bit of the question?
She's looking at me, so I guess
It's just so typical. It's like, oh, so I have to face the camera here.
Okay, so the first question was, what was the lesson that I wish I had learned before going into consulting, or that I have learned early on in my career? And it is about relationships, and they touched on that. Every single person you know is a valuable relationship to retain. I regret so much early on in my career, even before joining EY. I was 3 years in industry, then 4 years into EY before I moved to Atkins, and that's when I learned the value of relationships, because Atkins did not have a strong brand name like EY. EY, RFPs and opportunities were coming through the door. So we're sitting, and these new projects are coming to us. You really didn't need to rely on your network or to build relationships. And I learned the lesson the hard way when I moved to Atkins. I said, oh my God, I wish I'm still in contact with that guy or that person or that lady. So every person you meet is a potential valuable relationship for the future. Work on your network, work on your relationships, and preserve that as much as you can. Regarding the challenging environment, that was your second question, that what keeps us going. I'm going to answer from a pure personal perspective. What keeps me going is the exposure. I love that every day I might be working in a different industry, in a different sector, that I'm going to be meeting new people and new clients. It's amazing. I cannot imagine myself sitting behind the desk doing the same job every day. I'm sorry if some of you are in that kind of job. The second part of what I love is the amount of learning that you gain from that type of exposure. So before you venture into any new project, you are expected to be the expert. So lots of reading and research in order to equip yourself with the knowledge that you need in order to be able to serve your clients at the highest level of quality. So that exposure, that like fast-paced environment actually gives me the motivation to keep going, and this is what really interests me about management consulting.
If I may ask Amal, sitting at that other side of the coin, how do you ensure that the consultants are motivated, and how do you emphasize networking when you're looking at recruiting new consultants? What are the things that you focus on when you're choosing consultants, joining your team, and how do you keep them motivated? So also some of the challenges that consultants face, and what do they come to you for?
So I think the biggest challenge that consultants face is finding good talent for their teams. Projects are there, especially in the region that we're in. It's basically building these strong teams to support and to deliver these projects. In terms of networking and finding the right talents, usually we get the best talents from referrals. They are basically people that our consultants themselves met, or that have been networking with, and that have built relationships among the years or across the years. And that's when it's highlighted that, okay, I know the right person for this job or for this project. And I just like to, can you remind me of the second part of the question?
The challenges that they come to you for.
The challenges that they come to us for is actually finding the right people and bringing them in on time, more or less. I think that's the main thing that they have, and keeping their talents motivated and wanting to motivated in terms of lots of things, in terms of learning and development, in terms of opportunities, in terms of also benefits and compensational aspects as well.
Thank you, Aman.
Thank you.
Said, would you like to add something?
Yeah, it's very, very similar to what was said before. I mean, the one thing I wish I'd known is that when I was on the MBA program, I was just really focused on the case studies and reading and all that. I wish I didn't got to know my cohorts a lot better, spent time with them, understood, you know, their respective backgrounds, their aspirations, and all that. And all of that. In terms of challenge, again, it's the same for me. I love learning. I know it sounds cliche, but I really love learning. And the other thing is, I really enjoy working with my colleagues. You know, I really like spending time with them. I like getting to understand, you know, what makes them tick, how they think. You know, I really, for me, it's a real pleasure to sit in a team with, you know, with competent people trying to forge a solution, and that's part of what still keeps me in the industry.
How about you, Isabel?
So I'll echo what the other panel member has said, but I'll also add on what keeps me going is the dynamics that is there. So within one day, I'll be working on one project, but at the same time, I'll be working on an internal initiative as well, supporting one partner, but also working on an RFP and working on a proposal, supporting another partner, and working with people from different geographies as well. So it's true that we're based in MENA, but we work with people from India, we work with people from Europe, we work with people from the Americas as well. So this whole environment and the dynamics of it just makes the day pass so quickly that we don't even feel it. And I think we all look forward for the next day, but definitely we take some time off on the weekend to just relax and then charge up for the next week.
Thank you, Isabel. Any more questions from the audience before we take the online? Yes, we have a question. Can I ask you please to?
Sure.
Could you please introduce yourself and ask the question?
Hello, everyone. My name is Abdul Latif, and I wanted to ask, it's a two-part question. The first one was, what would be your advice for, because I understand you mentioned the industry expertise, the focus or the specialty, but what would be your advice to someone who has multiple industry expertise in a specific task, so client consultancy, but in multiple industries? So that's the first one. I can ask the second one?
Yeah.
Okay. The second one, what would be the emphasis on the names you worked before I joined the consultancy? What would be the emphasis on the names I worked with versus the type or the depth of work I did? So I did a big project or a big, let's say an example of a project, but not with a Mercedes or a BMW, for example, but with, let's say, a local family company. Would that have an impact on the value of the candidate attempting to join? Thank you. Sorry for getting my last time.
Let me attempt to answer your first question first. So you're talking about experience in multiple sectors and industries. Yes. So that's a typical CV that we receive. And I've received one recently. You look at it and you don't know where to focus. So this is what I call it, a Superman CV. Somebody claiming to have in-depth knowledge across a variety of industries, which number one makes you doubt whether really the knowledge is strong across the board at the same level of quality. And second, it makes me think, where can I use you, right? So Big Four, you will find probably is the same across all the four companies, is that we're really very specific in terms of our focus sectors and our service offerings. So my advice to you would be to research well the company you're applying to, find out which sectors are of focus, and tailor your CV to really zoom in and bring out the best of your knowledge in that sector, and avoid really overwhelming the receiver of that CV with a lot of information that might hurt you and not benefit you. All right, that would be my advice.
Yeah, just echo what he said. I mean, I get the same as well. I think if I take your question and make it more generic, it's how do I package myself to best approach consulting companies? And it's not easy. I hear you, especially if you have exposure to a lot of different industries, sectors, and you've worked with different types of firms. So what you need to do is filter that. Think, okay, I have experience in 5 sectors, for example, but I only want to focus on, say, 2, because those are the 2 that I know well. Even those I may not be an expert, but I know enough to be credible to a prospective employer. So that would be the first step. Do some of the initial filtering, and then target the companies who are active in those sectors. Okay? Go to their websites, understand what they do, understand who their clients are, do some research. I can't tell you how many times I've interviewed candidates who were great on paper, but they did little or no preparation beforehand. And it's the #1 frustration of every consulting firm. They come in, you ask them, why do you want to work in consulting? Why do you want to work for Deloitte, EY, PwC? Oh, I want to work in consulting. You know, if that's the level of, shows me that that person has done no research. So you need to spend time, you really need to do your homework. You need to focus. And, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's where the Manchester Careers Advisory Service can help you. And speak to other people. You know, it's not something that's done overnight. You might need to have several iterations of your CV and talk to lots of people until you're really comfortable. You have a clear value proposition because you're selling yourself. And if a prospective employer doesn't understand your value proposition, then he or she's not going to recruit you. It's really that simple.
You had a second question, right? So you're asking whether a brand name of your employer is more important than the types of projects you work on. So my personal answer, that's my own view, is that I would value the types of projects much more than the brand name. So the types of projects tell me what kind of skills that you have learned that can be transferable into consulting, both from a technical and functional perspective. And as I mentioned in answering the question about barriers to entry, this is one way to overcome the lack of management consulting experience, as I said, is equipping yourself with experience on projects that are, yes, delivered internally within your corporation, but that are eye-catchy for somebody like me when I look at your CV. Okay, so he has done some organization restructuring initiative within his company. He has developed a strategy in a certain function. He has developed certain policies and procedures, for example. That to me is more interesting than seeing that you have worked for, you said, Mercedes or BMW. Thanks.
I'd like to ask Aman here. I know that you're at the other side where you're recruiting consultants. I'm sure you see a lot of CVs, some of them with multiple experience coming from different backgrounds, as well as those who come from consulting. What would a stellar CV, a CV that is the one that would catch your eye, look like? And what advice would you tell candidates who want to submit CVs to you or to anyone who's hiring?
So I think what Zaid said was spot on. Researching and revising and relooking at your CV is one thing. Also adding a cover letter, introducing yourself in a better way is also a way to get a foot in to secure an interview or initial, pass the initial screening. So being more specific and understanding the role you're applying for.
Okay. Any more questions can we take from the Zoom?
Thank you, Hiba. We have a question from Saad Hasiba. Saad has advised he has 15 plus years of experience in the telecom industry, reaching a director level in the solution architecture field. He decided to do an MBA to enrich his knowledge and experience in business strategy and management, which raised his interest in the field dramatically. My question is, regarding the shift of career to management consulting, he's not sure how to identify the appropriate grade level that he should be targeting when applying for jobs.
Right, so he has 15 plus years of experience in telecom industry, and he wants to move into management consultancy. What's the best advice?
So first of all, we do not count years when we make the decision about mapping a candidate to a grade level within our career ladder, especially for somebody coming from industry. For consulting, it might be an easier decision, one-to-one mapping, and obviously a candidate wanting to transfer from one consultancy to the other will be obviously targeting a higher level. So there's a lot of other factors that come into consideration to address the grade level. And the nature of the service line where that candidate is applying to makes a big difference. So what I hear is that the expertise is in solution architecting. That's more relevant to our technology consulting service offering, where the types of projects are major transformation system implementation projects, where the technical expertise tends to be more valuable to the client than the consulting expertise. So somebody like Saad, if I'm not mistaken, or Saeed, might be more attractive to us to bring on board at potentially a higher level close to where he is currently in career. So it depends on various criteria. I addressed his particular case, but other people might have different considerations.
Anyone would like to add to that?
I'll just add that sometimes we get requests from industry experts, people with 10, 15 years plus experience in the sector, saying, oh, they want to work in strategy in a completely different sector. I think you have to be realistic when you apply to consulting firms in terms of, as I said earlier, what is your value proposition? If you have 10, 15 years or more in the sector and you're trying to go into another sector, then think about it from the employer's point of view. Why would they bring you in? And why would you want to discard that 15 years experience? I'm sure you worked very hard to gain that valuable experience. Why do you just want to say, oh no, that's enough, I want to do something completely different? So you really need to think about your value proposition long and hard before you even start talking to prospective employers, whether it's consulting or industry. You have to think about what is it that you bring to the table.
I think that's spot on, Zaid. That's a common question that I ask in every interview for people coming from industry. I say outside there are 3 people exactly like you, but with management consulting experience, applying for the same role. The only difference is that they're coming from management consulting, you're coming from industry. Tell me why I should choose you. And this goes back to the answering the value proposition question. So you also need to do your homework and prepare to answer these questions.
And attend all our career events, because we focus on personal brand, value proposition, and how to pitch yourself to your employer. So these are really critical skills that you can build up during the MBA. I'm conscious of time, so we'll take 2 last questions, one from the room and one from the Zoom. Okay, can I invite you? Introduce yourself.
Hi, so my name is Niaz. I'm part of the full-time MBA class from Manchester. My first question is to Amal. You mentioned you're involved in recruitment. My background is more entrepreneurial rather than corporate. So my question is that something that you find attractive when you're presented with CVs? And the skills that, for instance, an entrepreneur has are very different to an industry expert. Is that something that you find attractive and is valued? Or do you look for industry experts in the field? And the second question was for yourself, Zahid. So you mentioned how you're moving forward post-COVID. But during COVID has been around for almost a year now. How did you guys face the challenge? Because previously, like you mentioned, you visit a lot of clients and you do live work. So how did you face those challenges during COVID?
Okay, we'll start with part one with Amal.
The question was about entrepreneurial skills and how we value them in terms of recruitment. The skills that we are looking for have to do with a mindset that basically creates and develops and has the ability to start something new and be more creative in terms of the industry. So it honestly depends on what is needed in terms of projects, what is needed in terms of and where the fit is specifically. So there aren't any skills that won't work specifically. We actually have a very wide and a very specific kind of skill set that we're looking for. So it really depends on what level this person is coming in and what role they're going to take. But it's not that if you have entrepreneurial skills, we would rule out those CVs or those skill sets.
Would you look at the entrepreneurship idea that they started?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. And what skills are presented through that? So it's a general question, but honestly, there are like specific answers to that, and it really depends on who what the position is, who this person is, what the skill set they are holding is, and where it fits within the firm.
Thank you.
Yeah. With regards to your question around how we managed throughout the COVID period, it was a challenge, I'll say like that. Not just in terms of communication, but also people were worried that they may not have a job next week. So frankly, a lot of them, their minds were distracted in terms of, what are they going to do? How are they going to, support their families and so forth. The other point was that conference call technology, not all companies had leveraged it to its full capacity. So there were lots of communication issues at the outset. What we did is that we expanded project timelines, we reduced fees, we adopted flexible working, we introduced a whole host of measures in order to accommodate the transition period, if you like. But even with all of that, it wasn't easy. It was a challenge because, whereas in the past we would conduct workshops face to face, we had to do it through a Zoom or Skype call or whatever it was. And even in that kind of environment, there is a lot of scope for misunderstanding because, the signal cuts out, or you don't quite understand the context in which somebody says something. So we always had to follow up with email confirmation, with telephone calls and the like, and obviously that impacted project delivery timeframes. However, as time went on and people got more used to using conference calling technology and they installed it in their respective places of work, it became more the norm. Yet still, we're moving back towards face-to-face meetings.
Thank you. Thank you, Zaid. So we'll take a question from the Zoom room. From Bassam Al-Kusa, he's asking, do you consider sales and business development professionals good candidates for consultancy services? And Asim, could you answer this question? Asim, are you with us?
Who would like to answer this question?
Makram will address this question.
So it's definitely one of the skill sets that are required to operate as a management consultant. And the more senior you are, the more you are expected to sell and win new business. And the weight will tilt towards sales and business development more as you become director or partner. But is it something that would attract our attention? If it is only sales and business development, potentially not. It has to be coupled with sector expertise or management consultancy expertise. Because at the end of the day, we do not have a lot of dedicated people in sales and development because everybody is expected to sell and deliver at the same time. Unless you are targeting a corporate type role that mainly focuses on sales and development within our organizations, but client-facing, potentially not an attractive profile.
Thank you so much. Asim has just informed us that he had to leave the session, so we thank you all for that. So, parting words, I know that we're a bit over time. If we can hear the last advice and takeaway from each of our speakers, we'll start with Aman.
So thank you, Hiba. So last advice is honestly to work on, or I think it has been said, but develop and work on networking, and that is something that will help a lot within developing your career and hopefully giving and opening opportunities for you in the future.
So networking. Thank you, Amal. Isabel?
I would say understand the company you're applying to and build your story based on the position that you want. So again, value proposition, that's very important.
Thank you, Isabel.
Join consulting. So that would be my advice to you. I'll tell you a quick story. So when I was being assessed to be promoted from assistant manager to manager, we go through an assessment day. And they simulate the worst day of your life by bringing everything that might happen in consulting into a single day. So you arrive at the test center, they give you an RFP, an opportunity, you need to respond to the proposal by 6 p.m. A client calls you in, angry, wants to cancel your contract because you're not performing. Your partner brings you in for a career development discussion about your next move. One of your counselees come in with a variety of problems. You have financial issues on an ongoing engagement, and you need to figure out the financials of that engagement. Literally, the worst day of your life, but to me, it was the most exciting day of my life, and I never forget any single detail of that day. So it's a very exciting industry. I love the exposure, as I said. I think it's a tremendous way to learn and develop and grow in a fast-paced way and see the world and get exposed to a lot of industries and clients. So
the thrill of it. Zaid?
Well, if after everything we've said this evening hasn't put you off applying to consulting, then you should. If you like problem solving, if you like engaging with lots of people, if you like challenges, then you should apply. But be mindful of the expectations that will be placed on you. Be aware of the challenges and the issues, not just for yourself, but for your family as well. If you have dependents, if you have a significant other, you have to bear in mind, what sort of impact that will have on them. So a lot of things to take into account, but all things considered, I think it's a great career choice.
Great, thank you. Again, thank you all for your insights, for your knowledge. Great takeaway and great tips. You need to start with networking, with understanding your value proposition and how you can stand out. You need to build that stellar CV. You need to be agile, flexible, adaptable, problem solver, and much more. So with this, I would like to end the session. I would like to thank you, Isabel. I would like to thank you, Makram, Zaid, and Aman from Saudi Arabia. Thank you all for attending the session today. It was great having you. But before we leave, I would like to take a moment to talk about social responsibility. So before we end the session, social responsibility is the way we're making a difference to our social and economic societies. And we do that through contributing to our research, teaching and learning, and through our events. Since 2006, the Middle East Center has been participating in multiple activities and has been partnering with several charity organizations to focus on social responsibility and to bring value to the communities and to the people that we live in. Social responsibility is one of the three core strategic cores of the university, sitting equally alongside world-class research and discovery, as long as learning and student experience. And of the so many activities that we're participating in, I would like to focus on one, which is Adopt a School project. We have partnered with Dubai Cares in order to build a school in one of the developing countries. And the school that we have committed to build is in Nepal. This school will provide thousands of children with access to primary education. And who understands education better than you? We will build a school in Nepal, and this school will provide the children in that village with primary education, with access to teachers and all necessities. The goal of this project is really to raise funds, which is equivalent to 165,000 dirhams, and in pounds is approximately 33,000 pounds, approximately the cost of an MBA. So I would like to invite you all to watch this video and to take part in this initiative. You will all find these leaflets on your chairs. There is a QR scan code, which you can scan it to learn more about the Adopt a School project. We'd like to invite you to take part in it. It will be a school by the University of Manchester students, alumni, friends, partners, corporates, and your entire network. So I'd like to play the video.
Last year, we asked and you answered. Your generous contribution towards building and renovating schools for less fortunate children has given them a basic right that many of us take for granted: education. While you watch this video, you can actually witness the impact made. However, we are far from achieving our goal. Today, 58 million children worldwide are out of school and are in urgent need of our support. So this year, we would like to continue our journey with you to help us reach more children by building and renovating more schools. Education is what will help pull them, their families, and their communities out of poverty. With your support, we believe that we can reach these children and provide them with a chance of realizing a better future. We believe that together, we will be able to reach more children and provide them with education, an asset that can never be taken away from them.
Just a small reminder that all donations over 100, you will get a gift outside. It's a special edition coffee mug. So please let us know if you've donated so that we can gift you that cup. Thank you so much. With this, I'd like to end the session. Thank you to our speakers for taking the time. Thank you for attending the session. And we look forward to seeing you in our next event. Thank you and good night, everyone.
Thank you.